So Deborah actually called me out the other day as we were just trying to figure out how to set this up best. And she said, I just don't know what to do because when I teach classes, to those of you who are in classes, that I'm a pacer, is what she called me. I like to run around and move around. But knowing the nature of this one, we decided to bully me into sitting down in front of the microphone. And so I'm going to do that, and hopefully I'll be okay having done so, because that way you can all hear me. So that's a hard thing. So Andy, you are the person who I'm supposed to hand this to. I'm going to ask everybody, is this a lot better now you can hear me? I also know that there's some people using hearing devices, and so we specifically wanted to do that as well. This would make it a little bit easier. So Andy, if you could just grab this. I'm just going to pass around a notepad. If you could just put your names on this, because there may very well be some follow-up information that will come out of this. And I want to be able to do that. My guess is that because most of you registered, we already have your email addresses. I also know most of you, almost all of you, one or two. I can't call out the people by name that I don't know. So that doesn't exactly work. But like I said, as we do have some follow-up to it. I apologize, a couple minutes late here. I was teaching the 8th and 9th grade class. We had just a fascinating conversation about Nevi'im, about the prophets, and then connecting the idea of the prophets, what they were doing in the Hebrew Bible, connecting to how they speak to us and prophecy speaks to us today, and then linking that to our upcoming Pesach Seders. So it was actually this fascinating arc where we brought together several different parts to it, and I kept saying to them, but there's all these people waiting, and they said, too bad, we want to finish our conversation. So the 8th and 9th graders, it's not my fault, it's theirs. So just getting that out there. Normally when I get a chance to teach classes, it's more of a sit around a table and a little bit interactive, but as the registration was growing for this one, we moved it into this room and we moved around some different things in the religious school, because frankly there's a lot of you. And by doing that here, and also it allows us to have this microphone, because I know that that's helpful some people as well. In general, I seem like a very quiet, mild-mannered person, but I'm really loud, but I just want to make sure you can all hear me now. Okay? Excellent. And if you didn't hear me, you're not responding, so that's okay. I don't think you need to put your email addresses on this one, just names. I think it'll be okay. And if there's somebody we have trouble tracking down, we'll do that. But there's a lot of you, and I don't want to bog that down too much. Just want to get names that are here. I really appreciate how many people are here today. And irrespective of what the number is, I appreciate that you are here today. I think that sometimes the nature of humanity, certainly our American parts to it, is we avoid hard stuff. We avoid it. That's who wants hard stuff, right? We don't want to do those hard pieces. And I think our tradition guides us so frequently, so effectively, so inspirationally, in not just what feels good and what's a nice warm and fuzzy, but in being really willing to say the things that are painful, right? That they don't make us feel good, at least not on the surface, and what is there. And Jewishly, we do that a lot. We just don't always think about it necessarily. And that actually is links to some of what we were discussing in the high school class a little bit earlier, is Yom Kippur is not about making you feel good, right? And the central mitzvah of Pesach is not sing about frogs here and frogs there, and that there were frogs jumping everywhere, though that is a part of the Seder. God help you if you skip that song with the right people at your Seder. But the central mitzvah of Pesach is B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam l'ra'ot et atzmo ke'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim. That in every generation, every single solitary individual sitting around that table is to recognize that you are a slave, that you are powerless, that you were controlled by others, and that you are not now. And to understand that, to understand both what it means to be constricted, literally what the word Mitzrayim means, to be constricted, Meitzarim, and that you expanded that out. So we confront these things head on. And we do it specifically as it relates to death with one word. And it's the word that flows through everything we do Jewishly that relates to death, and that is the word kavod. That the word kavod, the word respect, is the word that is filtered through everything. The question, and some of what I'm going to try and answer over this little bit of time together and guide some of the conversations around, is for whom or for what or how do we achieve that concept of respect? Because that respect is most certainly for the one who has died. That respect is most certainly for the one who has wishes relating to that. That respect is for one's children or other family members who can be impacted by that. That respect is for the community. That respect is for the nature of society that's there. And so that word filters through everything as it relates to your own peace of mind, as it relates to your children, your grandchildren, whoever that may be. And we're going to walk our way through it. So I'm glad we're doing it. And this is not, and I've been trying to be clear in all the promotional materials, the communications, right? The communications around the session, that this isn't focused on the rituals. They will be talked about a little bit, but this is more on the logistics of what is there, though those other things will happen. What I want to do then over this bit of time, while I'm doing most of the talking, and then there will be room and space and time for questions at the end, is to understand the different things like, what can I do in advance? Because by nature of the fact that you are here now, it is in advance. 2, that was a good one. 2 is understanding what are the different things that I can, how do I go about doing the different things in advance? And 3 is an understanding that though I wish there was one phone call I could make or one email that I could send, whomever I may be in that sentence, that would take care of everything, it does not and it cannot. And some of that is related to living in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and some of that is just related to the nature of how it works. There are a few communities around the country that have figured out how to make all of that happen, either on legal means and on emotional means. We are not one of them. And I mean we, the DMV, although we're always trying to do a little bit better at that. And where this plays out most directly is a deep understanding, and I'm going to get into that in just a moment, is that Virginia is one of 9 states, I think is the most up-to-date one, that a funeral home and a cemetery cannot be owned by the same entity. So it's not unique to Virginia, but for those who like to do public math, 9 out of 50, you figure that one out. So they cannot be owned. That's one of the reasons that we need to explain how this looks, what this looks like, and to make sure you can understand that. And so, and I'll come back to this again, but any place that tells you, oh, we can take care of everything, that we is not so clear as to what that looks like, and is most typically not actual, not real at all. So first, before I get to that, is when that moment comes, I'm not talking about the pre-planning stages of this at one second, but just in a logistical way, because things may happen before we get to that point, is when somebody dies, one thing you do is you call Olam Tikva. This community made a decision many, many years ago, long before my time, and it's been reaffirmed by the board of directors over and over again, that you notice that when you call here, that except for a couple fluky little things, you never get an answering machine. You will always have a real person who will answer the phone. During business hours, it'll be somebody who works here, and after hours, including Shabbat, including holidays, including in the middle of Yom Kippur, there's an answering service where you will get a real person who may not be able to answer the question, but will see to it that a real person will get that question and will get it to the right person, depending upon what type of emergency that is. If it's the middle of the night and it's 3 in the morning and you need me, they're going to call me and we'll talk, and I'll be there for you. Rabbi Siegel will be there for you. If it is during Shabbat or it's during one of the holidays, somebody else will get that call and understand what's going on, and as soon as Shabbat is over, as soon as the holiday is over, then we will be there in every way possible. And if there's something that's more time sensitive, somebody else will be able to answer what those questions will look like. The other phone call that needs to happen right away is to call the funeral home that you're going to be using. I'm going to get to funeral homes in just a moment what that is, but just so that you'll understand that, you're going to want to call the funeral home. Don't get caught in the details of that. It's going to become way more clear in just a couple of minutes, but that's the one that needs to, those 2 calls should happen right away. If it's 3 in the morning, and it isn't one where you need to talk to me right at that minute, I'm okay with you waiting till 6:30. But if not, I'm in the directory. My number is there, or if you call the shul, they'll connect you, and we'll get to that point as well. Cemeteries will answer you during business hours, but afterwards you'll get an answering service and they'll call you back after the time. But the funeral home you'll get a call back from a real person who will be able to be helpful to you. So we have these 2 entities that are out there. We have then a funeral home and we have a cemetery. I need you to see these as really completely separate things, even if you're in a community or you make a choice where they do exist in the same place. You have to see them as a separate entity. The funeral home will have nothing to do with your grave. Will have nothing to do with the grave. They will be doing everything except the actual land. Okay? What does that mean? Let me give you a quick brief history to what that's looked like here, and then I'll give you some of the specifics of it as well. Back in 1976, there was a committee put together, and it's been different numbers of congregations involved over the years, but something called the Jewish Funeral Practices Committee of Greater Washington. And what they did, and I actually was lucky enough to live in Chicagoland, in the Chicago area, where they have a very similar type of thing. So the first congregation I served, I was very familiar with this as well. And what they do is they set up what a plan, or not a menu, just a protocol for if there is a death in the Jewish community and you want what they call here the synagogue plan, not the Olam Tikva plan, but the synagogue plan. There's actually 40 congregations that are part of it in the DMV. What they will do is they say these are the expectations that you as a party to this plan and you as a member of Olam Tikva are privileged or entitled to be part of that. These are the things that you will get. If you've been around for a long time, I don't know who it was in the earliest of years, but when I came, it was Ives Pearson, which is a funeral home. I'm sorry, let me back up one sentence. And so when the committee, the Jewish Funeral Practices Committee of Greater Washington actually has put together a contract with 3 different funeral homes at any one time, one in Montgomery County, or sometimes covering more of Maryland, one in the District of Columbia, and one in Northern Virginia. So there's always been one. Here in Northern Virginia, at first it was Ives Pearson, which is in Falls Church, and I was trying to remember what year they were there when I first came, and then it ended soon afterwards, and I actually was just doing a little Google research to try and find out why, and the article that pops up, just to bring whatever it is to this moment, was Ives Pearson kicks the bucket. That was the news article that I found on that. So apparently that was 1999, somebody feeling very clever in that moment. And then the Jefferson Funeral Home took over the contract at that time, and Jefferson had it then from 99 for somewhere between 10 and 15 years. I don't remember the exact year. And then they decided that while they would continue to want to serve people, that they didn't want to be constricted by the contract primarily financially, because it's a set price for it, that Cunningham Church, also in Alexandria, Jefferson's in one part of Alexandria and Cunningham Church is in Old Town, that they would take it on. None of these are what, if you've lived in other places where they talk about being a Jewish funeral home, but they all had and have a deep understanding of what the needs of the Jewish community are, and they take care of those things. It feels good. We're a tribe, right? It feels good that it's a Jewish funeral home, but to understand that while that feels good, it's not a requirement in any sort of way. What is required is that it is done properly. It's like kashrut, right? Kashrut, you can have kosher food that is completely made in every sort of way, produced in every sort of way by people who aren't Jewish. But we guarantee that the right things are done with it. So to understand, it's similar in this fashion as well. There are various needs that we have as a Jewish community, and being a party to this contract means they will make good on all of those things. So what is in this contract? Okay, I'm just going to we're just going right into the logistics that are there. It is picking up the body at the place of death and bringing it to the funeral home, whichever one you're using. It's collecting all the necessary information to have the right permits, as well as to have a death certificate that will come from that. It's keeping the body appropriately as we do that Jewishly, knowing that we bury. It's not 24 hours. The law is as soon as one can possibly do it, which is not a metric, but is something that is there. And it means keeping it properly, which means refrigeration. It does not mean embalming. It doesn't mean any chemical replacement that you may be familiar with. We don't do that. There are some very unusual circumstances, usually related to Arlington National Cemetery, which is not one of my main topics for today. But it'll simply be refrigeration, and that's appropriate for that time. It includes a simple wood pine casket that is there. Usually, as the contract has, that it has a Magen David, a Star of David, on that as well, but that's included in the contract as well. Having a room where tahara and shmirah, the ritual washing and the watching over the body, can happen is part of it. It's on the day of the funeral, transporting that person either to the cemetery, or if there's a place in between, which here in our community means here in the synagogue, and then to the cemetery and assisting with what goes on there. General paperwork that is there, and a Shiva candle. Those things are all listed in the contract, and those things are all necessary for us Jewishly. Here are the extra parts to this contract, which are not necessarily required are not required by Jewish law, but what make this contract so beautiful, and with the concept of kavod that I already mentioned for this, is that it is a guaranteed price, which has already been set in advance for all the things that I just said. You can add all kinds of things onto that, and primarily the thing that people would add to that, it's really two things that people may choose to add to that. One is if you want to have a limousine or a car that'll drive you, that's not included in that contract. That would be something, they'll help you do it, but that's not included with it. Actually, a second one that people don't really think about is that you may have noticed, and it's actually more of a Jewish kind of thing, that because we bury so quickly, the idea of an obituary in the newspaper, for those of us old enough to still read a newspaper, that's not included in those things. There'll be a death notice that'll be on their website, but if you want that's something in a newspaper, online, as well as in print, you need to take care of that separately. Again, they'll help you with it, but that's not something that they'll do. And what was the third one? What did I just say? Oh, and the third one is if you want to choose a different kosher casket besides a plain wood one, that would be extra for you to do that, and I'll explain that a little bit more in just a second. Is that everybody? Did everybody get their name on it? No. Oh, okay. All right, let's. Here are the other things that are part of this. Besides that negotiated price, part of the contract is that you do not have to physically go to the funeral home before the service. If you do this in a non-contract way with a different funeral home, you're going to have to go in. That's going to be another thing that you or your family members will have to do. You can do everything by fax or email. You'll be able to do that. You may want to go in, but you don't need to go in. They are not allowed to try and upsell you. It is a business, and they make much more money on a mahogany casket than on a plain wood casket. As long as it's all wood, that there's no metal in it, it's still kosher. But they will not try and upsell you, which some of you, if you've dealt with other funeral homes, you know that feeling, or you've seen that on TV, of wouldn't your loved one enjoy their eternal journey that much more if they were adorned in gold? They are not allowed to do that. They actually won't bill you until after all of this. I bet some of you have had some experiences with funeral homes or seen it before, where you've seen people standing at the cemetery and we haven't begun the procession because you have to be writing a check. And my heart just hurts when I've seen that before. The part of working within the contract is that they will not be expecting you to do that in advance. The contracted amount, and I don't have exact dollar to it, because the contract was written and it's either 4 or 5 year contract, and it goes up by certain percentages, so I didn't get the 2025 exact number, but it is within $100 of $3,500 for all the things that I just said, doing that within the contract. Quick business comment, that is a loss leader. They are not making money on that. They are making money with the hope that you'll form a meaningful relationship with them, and you will bring other people who will reach their 120 years of life, and you'll bring it there. They're hopeful that some of their other services that you will choose to take advantage of them. They can't push the casket one on you as part of the contract, but they hope to do that. It is, they're not making money on that. They never have. Frankly, that's why Jefferson opted out, because they were willing to do all of that, but they said, we're losing money doing this thing. Cunningham is losing money doing this. I don't know exactly how much they're doing. I have a pretty good sense in my mind, but this is part of what they want to do. Andrea, did everybody get a chance to get their name on it? Okay. Thank you. So that's what that will cost. If you were to go to another funeral home and ask for all of those things, I did not go, and nor would it be appropriate to do so, nor would they really tell me because of the way the business works, but you would realistically expect this to be about $5,000. Okay, so I just want to put that in perspective. Let us all be grown-ups in this room. $1,500 is a lot of money, and $1,500 is not a lot of money in terms of how we make the choices of what we want to do, but I just wanted to have all that information out there for you in clarity of what that will look like. You can use other funeral homes. You don't have to. Just let me finish this next thing, and then I know there were a couple hands there, although I'm hopeful that most of them I'll be able to say I'm going to get to it. You can use other funeral homes. That's absolutely possible. They can do all of these things. A funeral home down the street, I guess we don't have one down the street anymore, but can do all of these things, but they're not necessarily set up in two ways. One is they don't have the understanding necessarily of what people need and want Jewishly. And third, they may not just have the space. When we talk about having ritual washing, people watching over the body, they just may not be set up for that, and those conversations can be very difficult with it. But again, if it can be done right, it can be done anywhere. I'll pause for these hands, and then we'll go forward.
Is this contract open to any person, or just only the synagogue?
So the question was, is the contract, do you have to be a member of a synagogue that is party to the contract to do it? I always understood that you did. My understanding in a nuanced way is that they won't challenge you. If you say, I want the synagogue plan, that they won't demand to know which synagogue you're a member of. So you ideally don't need to be part of one. If you're not part of a synagogue, you've got other issues of who the rabbi may be and who the community is going to support you. But apparently you don't technically need to be. Okay.
If you prepay the synagogue and the contract ends with Cunningham, do they refund the money or do you just continue to use it just in the future?
So it's a great question that I have a feel for, but I need to actually check and get updated conversation with Cunningham on what that looks like. The question was, if you've prepaid with the place that has the contract and then they give up the contract, another funeral home takes it over, what that will look like. My understanding to this point, I did not research that specifically, my understanding was that if you made that contract that you made, when you prepaid it, you made that with the funeral home, and they therefore, even if they're no longer part of the contract, will continue to honor that. Ives Pearson's is out of business. I can't speak to that, but that's my understanding of that.
As part of the contract, if you're going to a cemetery out of state.
I'm going to come to that. Other funeral homes that are out there. I would bet that, I know that some of you in this room, I don't know how many of you in this room, have seen this flowing through your social media stream or advertisements everywhere. And in the past 3 months, there's this new place called the Northern Virginia Jewish Funerals. I met with them 3 weeks ago to try and understand what exactly was going on here. This is a company that's based in Texas. They have sites both in Houston as well as in Dallas. They started one in Cleveland and sold it to some other people in there. They want to be sensitive to all the Jewish concerns there. It is a for-profit company. This isn't a nonprofit agency that's doing that, but that's okay. That's part of it. Their facility that they have is located in Tysons, so it's not a place where you would go. They came and understood the community that we either do things graveside or we do them in synagogue, so they didn't build an expectation that that would be a place there. I have not yet seen it. We talked, because this only happened right before, it was right after Purim, and here we are, and it's Pesach. So I haven't yet seen it, but I've seen pictures of it. Seems like a wonderful place. Their price, if you walk in off the street and say how much will be closer, and again, we didn't discuss exact details, but we'll be in that $5,000 range. However, I will tell you this as you go forward and think about things, not to make decisions today. I told them I was having this session, and they asked to come and speak at it, and I said no, and because I didn't want this to be a marketing place for it. But I asked them specifically, people know about this, so first of all, the contract is renewed periodically, and that's actually coming up in a few months for the contract. And they may very well become the people who get the contract. I have absolutely no idea. I'm outside of that process. If that's what happens, that gives us some clarity on what that looks like. But if they're not, as they are not yet part of that contract, if you say, will you match it, they will match it, okay, in terms of the price piece. I don't know if that will not be true forever. And I said, can I say that to this group of people that I'm meeting with? And they said yes. So I can say that. That is not, so you all know that now, and they are going to do that. And I would imagine, as a new business coming into a small business, they will figure that out going forward. They may say at some point, sorry, we can't do that anymore, but for right now, we were upfront with it. The other one where you're going to come into things is that you're going to see, because we know that King David, and I'm coming to cemeteries now, King David is the cemetery that we use almost all of the time, or you use almost all the time, in that sense. And King David, which is part of a larger complex of 5 other cemeteries, also has a funeral service, a funeral company. I'm a straight shooter here, right? I'm not gonna play games here. They are being smart business people. They're saying, look, we can do this all together. And at the same time, Commonwealth of Virginia is one of 9 jurisdictions that do not allow the same company to do it. So you are going to be dealing with National Memorial Gardens or Memorial Park Funeral Home, and you're going to be dealing with King David Cemetery. The fact that they're at the same place is nice, but there's truly no advantage to that. And that if you were to choose, which is what the vast majority of people here do appropriately, to have a grave in King David, but to use Cunningham or whoever has the contract or another one is the absolute way to do it. I have spoken with them repeatedly over the time that I feel it is at best gray and at worst misleading to present it as one, because it's really not one. That is what it is, and people are very sensitive and thoughtful and responsive when I say that, and then life goes on. And that's how that will play out. I do not believe, and I'm saying this in a public setting, that I would not use their funeral services. I absolutely would use their cemetery, but I would not use their funeral services. I don't think their facility is set up to do it properly. I don't think they understand what Jewish community needs, and I would not. I do not recommend them. We'll figure it out if that's what has happened, because in the way of presenting this as one thing, what has happened sometimes is that some of you have already purchased through them because they said we can make this easy for you. But I encourage you to use other places for it. It doesn't, there's no benefit that is gained from that. Cemeteries. Switch to cemeteries. What you're doing is you're purchasing, yeah, right.
Before you go on to cemeteries, so if you say, I want the synagogue plan, is Cunningham the only place in Northern Virginia?
They are the only one who the contract exists with. This new Jewish funeral homes, they say, they've shown me the menu of what they offer. They will offer all of those same things. We didn't get into the details about the thing of not requiring the check in advance, but we did talk about the fact that they will come to you or handle things in other ways that they have said they are sensitive to that, and that'll be part of it. I didn't discuss with them the specifics of waiting afterwards, but again, they're so new. I haven't worked with them yet. They're really only a couple months into it. I'm interested to see how they'll benefit the community, particularly being honest. The contract's up June 30th, and I want to see who has the contract. If it's the way it is now, that it's two separate places, then I'll figure it out that way.
Cunningham has the contract now.
Cunningham has the contract now. Barbara.
I'm just curious, if you move out of the area, are you just out that $3,700?
So I need to not go into total history mode, because this all happened my first or second year as a rabbi, and I was a deer in the headlights. Here's the 30-second version. At some point in around 1990 or so, these two competing cemetery and funeral home conglomerates, one called Lewin and one called SCI, said, oh my gosh, look at all these baby boomers. They've all got old parents, and if we can sort of get them in our network now, this is a growth industry. And they got into an enormous, I don't know what to call it, trade war. They tried to buy up all the funeral homes and cemeteries all over the country. So some of you who may have these memories of the Jewish funeral home in town or the funeral home that you knew there, and then you go to them now and nobody there is Jewish or nobody there is the family anymore, they hired them all for 10-year personal service contracts, so it felt like it was the same family, and then they moved them all out. The whole idea was economy of scale. You buy 5 funeral homes, you just need enough hearses for 2 of them, and you just shift them all around. So, if they are part of that network, you can shift that possibly to one of the other places that will be part of it, but it depends on where you're moving to. I find the whole history fascinating, but it helps it depends upon your specific place as to if it's some of the same network for it. I'm going to get to cemeteries, so really quick.
Should we contact Cunningham before? If you go with the synagogue thing, you have to contact them.
I'll get to that in a minute.
I'll just quickly, in regard to Cunningham, is there a Hefer Kadisha or?
I'll get to that.
Regarding this thing that you're calling a contract, who determines, like you say, it's coming up for renewal? Do the 40?
The Jewish Funeral Committee of Greater Washington, of which we have a representative who's on it, but it's a group of people all over the DMV who do it. Okay?
Can you work with the National Funeral
we have, and it's just, it doesn't go as smoothly as we like it to do, but it'll happen. If you've already paid for it, it'll happen.
You can get your money back, you know. I mean, if you, I don't know where I am. In Virginia, you can, even if you get a non-revocable, you can request your money back.
Out of my skill set, my guess is that there's an attorney present in the room who can be helpful with some of the contract law that is part of it. If that's what it happens, we will absolutely, we the community will make that work. It's just not the ideal one.
Wouldn't it make sense to wait, most of us to wait till after June 30th and meet with you again, find out before we call Cunningham now, just kind of see?
So let's return to that in a little bit, because I didn't realize, I thought the contract had one more year to go, and I only learned that it's this year. I thought it was 2026, and it's actually 2025. So let's come back to that. When you buy at a cemetery, what they're going to do is they're going to have the grave, obviously. What you're also going to need to do is you're going to have to pay for opening and closing the grave. That will not be included in what you spend for the grave. There's going to be maintenance for the land going forward, and there's, ultimately going to be the marker, the stone that you will put there. Those are all the things that will be included into what the cemetery will take care of and what you will have to pay for. What are the options in the DMV? Some of you may be from communities. I grew up in a community where every synagogue had its own cemetery.
Did you say that in addition to whatever your contract price is, you still have to pay for opening and closing? Isn't that part of the contract when you contract with the funeral home?
Nothing that happens at the cemetery, to reframe, to put the question into the answer. If that was at the very beginning, nothing that happens at the cemetery has anything to do with anything I've said up to this point. This is all with the cemetery. No.
Would you mind repeating the questions that are being asked? Because we can hear the answer, but we can't hear the
I was just framing, I put her question into my answer, which is, what happens, what about, is the opening and closing included with the funeral home? Has nothing to do with that. That funeral home things were all the parts I discussed. The parts I'm talking about now is what you will arrange with the cemetery, and only with the cemetery. The funeral home, anything up to this point is not connected at all whatsoever. What are the options in the DMV? Because we don't have individual synagogue cemeteries for the most part. If you go up to Clarksburg, there's Gardens of Remembrance, lovely Jewish cemetery up there. There's Judean Gardens in Olney. Lovely, they're all, I don't want to give averages. It's a cemetery there. Those of you who are third or fourth generation Washingtonians, you might know Mount Lebanon, which is in Adelphi, but it's only people who are from like the old days. So the Palmer family I've been with, and the extended family there at out Mount Lebanon, not used by Virginians in general, but it's really people who bought plots or generations ago bought plots in the 30s and 40s and 50s who lived in DC. And then King David, which is over here on 29, which is part of that complex of National Memorial Park. That is where the overwhelming majority number of Olam Tikva connected and Northern Virginia in general connected people are buried. There isn't specific areas to individual synagogues, but that's where most people are. Some of you have been asking about this Fairfax Memorial that's on Braddock Road, just about 10 minutes away from here, because they sort of out of nowhere, all of a sudden people said, oh, what about the Jewish section? And I said, what are you talking about, the Jewish section? There, never heard anything about it. They worked with one local rabbi who's no longer in the area and opened what they call one. What came up very early with them, which besides just the weirdness of this whole conversation, is something that is, I think, really problematic for us Jewishly, which unless they have changed it, which to my knowledge they have not, which is they don't do burials on Sundays. We don't do burials on Saturdays. We're focused on kavod. That just doesn't work, right? You're going to prepay and then find out that that doesn't work. And so I haven't gone any further with them. There's no reason to go further with them as far as I've been concerned. The King David has really fulfilled our needs for the most part. And so I wouldn't say I reject that. I just have never been asked, and I think that's really problematic as we come to a place of kavod unless they change it. There's another place that's on the edge of Falls Church in Arlington that has opened what they call a Jewish section. I know at Road F they've been starting to use that a little bit, but when I met with them, they also said they wouldn't do Sundays. And so that was a non-starter for me. In terms of pricing, there is no way I'm going to get into the individual little details. I'm going to give you some very general ballparks. What it seems to me in the way that I've been able to research it over the years, and especially in anticipation of today, is they're all comparable, right? It's not like there's this one place that is way more expensive than everybody else and another place that's way less expensive. They're all going to be comparable. Within that, it's going to be about 3 words. And about the whole cemetery process is, come on, you know your pop culture. Say it louder, Michelle.
Location, location, location.
Location, location, location. It is all about location. Whether that's the location of where is that cemetery, you need to think about that. But there's also location for the day of the funeral, and there's location about people coming to visit the grave afterwards. So it's all about location, location, location. And then there's the other part of it. Within the cemetery, there's going to be different varieties of things that you will see to it. What you need to expect, just to give you a sense, hang on, Annie, just to give you a sense of what will be there, and I do not want this to be a conversation about the dollars because you're going to have that, but there is a range that will be anywhere. They'll say, oh, we have plots which start at $2,500. They will all tell you something like that, and they range up to buried in a mausoleum, a la Romeo and Juliet, or as you've seen some of those in New Jersey, that will be tens of thousands of dollars. There's going to be that fee for the opening and closing, which again will have a range that will be somewhere. You should be expecting that to cost around $1,500 to $2,500 in that general range. There's going to be a payment for continuing upkeep of it that will be part of it. That's going to be, depending upon which package you choose, $800, $3,000 that will be there. There'll be administrative fees. What you should really expect, do not think it's going to be less than $6,000 per grave, and conceivably up in a realistic way up to, it could get as much as 5,000 to 10,000 is really what that will look like. But I'm not going to get into those individual conversations. I want to be under a tree. I want to be have this kind of stone. Those matter. I'm not making fun of that in the slightest. That's up to you as to what that'll be.
Can you talk about this concrete liner? Is that funeral home and the mesh part that's required?
Right. So I was going to come to that in a second, but this is actually a good place for it. Here's an issue that exists in a lot of different places, and now I'm worried I didn't quite leave us enough time, so be patient with me if we go a little bit over. I have lots and lots of things here. In the perfect world, we know Jewishly we bury directly into the ground. However, in many places, and this is not unique to here at all whatsoever, the community I served in New Jersey, this was a very serious piece to it, is that there's a water table issue. And if they don't put in a concrete liner of various kinds, that the grave will collapse over time and will be disrespectful in all the ways that we can imagine that. My understanding, most places here require it, meaning the cemetery requires it. It's not necessarily required by the Commonwealth of Virginia, but they will require that. It is not ideal Jewishly, but permissible to do it. Some cemeteries have come up with different ways of doing it and have changed over time. The cemeteries have sold it where it's this liner that's there. Some of them have purposely sold one where they cut out a corner of it so that the earth can mix freely into it. And sometimes this is actually purchased through the funeral home, which, looking into the contract, that's something that the funeral home will sell. Where I served previously, and where some cemeteries have done, is the cemetery has made that available. Other times it's been through the funeral home. And I asked that question again in anticipation of this meeting. I met with the King David people, again, at some point a month ago-ish or so, in anticipation of that. And they seem to not be really doing that anymore. And so I don't want anybody to rush home this afternoon and make phone calls. That's one of the reasons I wanted to have that list, to catch up to you on that, is to find out really what's the right answer for being able to do that. What's the best way to do it? Because in different communities and different cemeteries, it's done differently. And I'm going to get this straightened out because it's been confusing. Again, it is permissible if you don't have that. We just ideally would like to do a little bit better. Okay, Annie, then Jeff.
So if you don't get a plot at the cemetery ahead of time, it might cost you more money, so it behooves you to check that out.
Okay, we're going to get to the pre-planning in a little bit.
Just to mention a couple of things. King David claims that it's an open lot. What that means can change, I guess.
So it has clearly changed. I'm hang on. I'm going to repeat the question. King David is part of this corporation out of Texas. They actually are really close to here, location, 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 which is good for the day of. It's good for becoming to visit. It's a perfectly lovely place as far as cemeteries go. We can all have our own personal aesthetic to that. But the people running King David, because it's this corporation, whoever you talk to this week may not be the person you talk to next week, who will be definitely different than the person you're going to talk to 6 months from now. And it's kind of a moving target on some things, and so there have been some more recent changes, and you can never keep track of it. I've had this conversation with some of you. I just need to be upfront about it. The people who've had the contract over the years, whether that was Ives Pearson, Jefferson, or Cunningham, they're wonderful. They're good to deal with. They're kind people. They understand where you are. The people who are with King David or National Memorial Park, there isn't that same personal touch. And you may get somebody who is kind and compassionate and caring, and you may get somebody who is there and has been at the company for 45 minutes at that point, and you just don't know which one you're going to get. This is a piece to it that has apparently changed some point during COVID, and I'm trying to, Henry would be proud of me, get to the bottom of it, to see what is going on there. I just want to keep us focused.
King David has a section.
I'm going to get there. So I'm going to get there. Stop. And what's the other one?
If you go to King David, be careful with the water table.
I'm going to. So, two things about King David in particular that are both a good thing as well as a challenging piece that could be to it. One is that some of you say, oh, but I don't like cemetery with the flat stones. I want an upright stone. What you might not realize is that they have a section of upright stones. The reason for that is some cemeteries prefer one or the other, but in terms of upkeep, when they're the flat stones, it's far more efficient and uniform for that. But they have a section that when you first come into the circle, immediately to your right, you can do that. That's the positive. The negative side is that this area to your left, and I spoke to them about this again, that it's been this continuing issue. They say they are upfront about that. There is one part of the cemetery that has a water table issue. There's actually a little creek, apparently, that runs deep underneath it. And so to know that there can be problems of that not looking the way you necessarily want that to look, or even the day of. And so I caution people away from that first section. It's if you're going around the circle, it's all the way, it's the last section where that would be a part of it. I think I actually covered those two parts of it. Those are the really important parts to it. Again, King David is not always the easiest to deal with. I don't want us to become overly focused on that. but it fulfills a lot of the other stuff, and I think that's really good for us in general. Burials out of town. Quick thing about this. Everything I've said is relevant to what's out of town because every issue I've discussed is important whether your burial is here or it's in New Orleans or it's in San Francisco. That is all going to be true. There'll be different price points, there'll be different ways that you'll deal with it, but know that will happen. What you'll need is you'll need a local funeral home here. So if you plan to be buried somewhere else, you're going to still need a funeral home here. If you choose to use the contracted one, that amount is actually specified in the contract. I think it's about $1,100 for all that they will do here in terms of picking you up, of taking you to the place, of whatever's involved in that. And then it becomes your particular situation. Is it a hearse drive to Baltimore to New York? Is it a flight to Chicago? That's something they will then help you work with the funeral home in that particular place. And so if you already know the funeral home there, you should make sure you have that in your records of, oh, I want you to contract, this is the name of the funeral home that I want you to deal with in Kansas City. And if you don't, they will help you find one as well. And there'll be a handoff to the other place there. But if you know that one, that's really great, but because the local one is going to need to handle everything as it relates to burial. There's a couple places that are sort of in-betweenish where it can be the place here that can handle it. Like I've gone from here and the burial was handled here for in Newport News, for example. Done that. Baltimore have done that. But once you start going further out, you're going to need a local funeral home in that place as well. But that's the thing to think about, yeah.
Can't you go directly to the cemetery and then have a service at the cemetery receiving? You don't need a funeral home, let's say in New York. Is that true?
Oh, you mean say I were to ask Cunningham to take care of it, can they take you directly to the cemetery in New York?
Yes.
They can do the transport that is there, but for the actual cemetery, it's going to depend upon their regulations there, if they will let a non-New York one or non-New Jersey one handle that, or there will have to be a handoff that's there. That's going to be specific to your place. But they do, and it's actually in the contract, how much they would charge for mileage, because there is a reality that people from here who are going to be buried out of town, the vast majority, the plurality certainly would be in New York. So that's actually in the contract. But the actual handoff would matter. Yeah?
Do you happen to know if Arlington National Cemetery, because we plan to be buried in California, do you happen to know if like Cunningham can handle us here, and then we would arrange for the flight?
100%. So I can speak for Cunningham and I can speak for Jefferson because I have history with both of them. If you have an Arlington situation that you have planned, or it's going to be somewhere else, they can do everything up until that handoff, wherever it's most important for that. I'm going to be going late a little bit.
Okay, we need to dismiss in about 3 minutes.
So we're going to, can we roll with that and dismiss from the from the lobby or somewhere else? Because I'm not going to be done in 3 minutes. Thank you for rolling. Everybody wave to Abby. And look, our brand new, don't leave, wave here. They don't know you, Abby, I'm trying to show you. She's our religious school principal who's been doing it since the fall, and she's great.
Give us a sense of how long we're going to go over, just because we're going to...
How
long?
I'm going to speak really quickly, and my goal is to finish with you in 5 minutes.
Oh.
Okay? Yeah. Or if you like, we can stay longer. But I just want to make sure you have questions to it. I thought I had figured out the right amount of timing, but the nerve of you to have some questions along the way. Okay. Couple things to comment about, to think about around ritual items. Here are the ritual things to think about. Jewishly, I would say historically we were about 50-50, whether people had their service here and then went to the cemetery, again speaking to the benefit of using King David, rather than a procession that goes 45 minutes or an hour plus away from here. We were about 50-50. COVID changed those numbers a little bit. I would say we're more now 75-25, just because people got a little more used to the idea of graveside services rather than being here. The advantage to doing it here, because this room feels like home to all of us. And it's comforting and feels good to be in this space. And it's a place, it doesn't become a place of death because of funeral, it becomes a place of an affirmation of life. And so I think it's really wonderful to be able to have it here. And as an extra benefit to it, because all those wonderful things that came from COVID, is we have the live stream. And so that if we have it here, it's a way for people to be able to use the live stream. Thank you, Ben. So those are the advantages to it. The graveside advantages to it is that it has everything in one place. And so you don't have to worry about transportation of people going from one place to the next place, particularly if they're people who are elderly, infirm. It's a way to be able to do that. The other thing that I've had this conversation with so many of you is, as comforting as this room is, if there are 50 people-ish, or 60 people or fewer, it feels cavernous rather than feeling comforting. And so, who knows, you have to take your best guess to it, but that if it's going to be a really small one, this room doesn't feel as comforting as we would like for it to fit. So I encourage you to think about that as well.
So the funeral home here does not have a place?
Right, so you are demonstrating, Margie, that you are from another place.
Right.
Some of us are from places where we had the funerals, we're always in the funeral chapel. That's the question she was asking. It's just totally dependent upon a community custom. In the greater Washington area, this isn't just an OT thing, the greater Washington area, it is not so common to have them in funeral homes. It's just not the way we do it. It's not how Washington was set up. Exactly the opposite where I grew up in Kansas City. You went to Lewis's. Every service was at Lewis's. And then you went to whatever cemetery you were going to. Just depends on the community. And that's why with this new company coming in, their market research said there's no reason for us to build a huge chapel, because the vast majority of them, they have a small chapel, but do it here. So I hope that question was clear. Yeah.
So if you do it graveside, I guess it's included in the cemetery costs that you pay?
The only thing they'll add to that is, because they're a business, they will charge you for chairs, and they will charge you for the canopy if you want a canopy for it. And that will be a part of, they'll ask you if you want those, even if the service is here. Tell them no. You may want some chairs. You have an 85-year-old aunt, you want her to be able to sit down, so you want to have some. That will be an extra that will be there. I understand that question, everybody, about the chairs and the canopy. Either way you have that, that will be a part of it. You will not be able to Zoom or live stream from a cemetery. You will, you can have somebody who will do it, which is what we all learned how to do during COVID. But obviously there's no Wi-Fi in the middle of a great big field. And so they're not really set up to do that.
But if you do it here at OT, is there a charge?
No. No. You are members of OT. It is our honor to support you in all the different stages and seasons of life. There's no charge for the rabbi. There's no charge for any of those things. That is what it means to be a member here, not as a menu, but to be part of the community. And membership has its advantages. Ellen.
What if the funeral is not for like the OT member, but the OT member's sister?
So, well, the question was, how far does that OT-ness stretch? I have a relative, I have a parent, of course. There's a child who, God forbid, we're talking about, but of course. And you know what? You say it's a cousin, of course I'm going to be there for you and with you. And what that will look like, there's one can make a donation to it. If it's something a little bit more distant, then our responsibility, speaking for myself and Rabbi Siegel, our responsibility is to Olam Tikva. You pay us a salary to make sure that we're available for those kinds of things. And if it's people who've made choices for their own personal reasons to not become a member, then there would be something that would be a fee for that. But in general, we're good folks. We'll be here for you. Lisa.
I recently dealt with Cunningham, and it's helpful to have them read out all the items when you're signing. They asked me, you just said there's no charge if you're a member for the rabbi. They asked
asked me if I wanted them to pay the rabbi $800, and I said, no, I would handle it myself.
Right.
But people should know that it's just like signing any other time.
Right, and the reason you should know that, I don't want to make this a note, I'm gonna repeat it, Annie. The question was about that funeral homes will ask about the fee for the rabbi, and the reason is because most places that's how it works. It's just you're members of Olam Tikva, and that's not how it works, right? You know that from other ways, that there are places that charge for high holiday tickets. We don't do that, right? It's not as though there aren't other necessary financial resources that we need to bring together, but that's not how it works here. We don't do that with those menu types of things. That's why they asked you that question.
Are you going to talk about getting buy a gravesite on the secondary market?
I'm going to mention it, but I don't believe anybody has expertise in it, but I'm going to mention that in a second. Yeah.
We have absolutely no family here. Is cremation absolutely verboten?
So Jewish law teaches us that, first of all, even if people are cremated, they put the cremins somewhere. I believe deeply with just all my emotional beings, less than my halachic legal beings, that in the concept of respect, that I'm just going to say this out. I just cannot post-Holocaust willfully burn a Jewish body. I just can't. Whatever that law says, I just feel so deeply wrong to me. And if this is something that is important to you for some other reason, we can talk about that offline. But for me, there's all sorts of legal conversations one can have about it, but I just don't see how post-1945, I just can't wrap my heart around willfully burning a Jewish body. In terms of the Chevra Kadisha and the Tahara, we have for decades had one here at Olam Tikva. It was a victim of COVID, and I thought I would have this put back together for you already, and I do not, for some complicated reasons that aren't really important to this. But we have slowly started, as you've seen, being able to put together our Shmirah, our guarding, that we've started being able to do. And my expectation was a year ago, and I haven't been able to finish it yet. But by this summer, our Chevra Kadisha will be back in place. Therefore, what we've been using for the Tahara part of it, the washing, is the Chevra Kadisha of Greater Washington. They will come to the funeral home and do the washing for us. So it's not done by OT people for the most part, although we're slowly getting back into it, but that will still happen. There's a very small honorarium that they ask for. I think it's $150 or something. In the context of all this money, it feels like pocket change. But that's where that will come from. And I'm committed to getting this back together for you, with you, not for you, but with you. And the thing that was really part of it was standardizing things to get us back to that. Pre-planning, last topic. The emotional benefits of pre-planning. More time to consider your options rather than what they call in the Talmud shata dechak, that the hour is pressing on you. 2, a sense of peace for yourself, knowing that the arrangements are taken care of for yourself, for your loved one. 3, it's taking care of it for your family members, so it's a sense of peace for them, that everything will have been done beforehand. And it allows people to talk about it. This is one of these things that it's so important to talk about it. I know we got doctors in the room also, and those of us, I hope everybody has done their planning for when they're not here and talked about things like advanced directives, thank you, I couldn't get the words, advanced directives. It matters less what you put on that piece of paper than the conversation you have with the people who will be here at the time. Right? Nobody's going to go to the safety deposit box when the doctor is standing there and saying, do we intubate or not? Right? You need to have those conversations around with people around you. And so doing the pre-planning allows for you to do that. There are financial benefits too. When you prepay, you lock in what the price is now. You're not going to get a charge every year and say they've gone up 5% and 6% and 7%, which they do every year. Sometimes they will even offer, they won't codify this, but they will sometimes offer a pre-planning discount, but nobody will actually say that out loud exactly, but that can be part of it. It's also financially benefit to your family. First of all, you've paid for it, so whatever is in your estate will go to them, and there are no surprises at the end. So between the emotional and the financial parts of it, then I think it just makes extraordinary sense, even if there's one part of it that you choose not to do, right? The fact is that the contract with whomever, whatever company has it, that price is going to be the price at that time. So even if you pay in advance or it's at the moment of need, it's going to be whatever that